Welcome back to the book log, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. This is the third and final book of the Farseer trilogy, and also the third book in the wider realm of the Elderlings series, which I think has 16 books. And with that, there will be spoilers in this review for everything up to and including Assassin's Quest. I'll say right off the top that this book is pretty much everything I wanted the third book in the Farseer trilogy to be. From what I've seen, this is often considered to be the weakest book in the trilogy, but I really could not disagree more. I already really enjoyed Assassin's Apprentice and Royal Assassin because even though it's aesthetically pretty conventional high fantasy stuff, Robin Hobb just does such an excellent job of characterization and plotting. She so meticulously constructs the interiority of these characters and their lives and emotions and motivations while simultaneously putting them in this world that's so vibrant and full of intrigue and drama and politics and magic. Even though she's not reinventing the wheel per se, she has just constructed a really good wheel. I think the thing I appreciate most about Assassin's Quest specifically is the way that it opens up and expands the world here, the Six Duchies and beyond. Assassin's Apprentice got into it a little bit with Jompe and the Mountain Kingdom and some other places here and there. Royal Assassin, on the other hand, was a very insular book that took place almost entirely in one location and was much more focused on this complicated spiderweb of both political and interpersonal drama surrounding the main character Fitz. Assassin's Quest is by far the most exploration we get of this world. Like it says in the title, this book is a literal quest, more like multiple quests, honestly, that take Fitz far and wide and have him encounter all sorts of fascinating new people and places and culture. Just to establish a little groundwork about how this book starts, I thought the very ending of Royal Assassin was incredible, with Fitz dying and having his consciousness escape through the wit into Night Eyes, where he lived for a time as a wolf before Birch and Shade coaxed him back into his corpse to live again as a person. Also, he could escape getting executed by Regal. And Assassin's Quest picks up right from that exact spot with an incredibly simple premise that I really appreciated. Fitz is now going to try to kill Regal. Everyone thinks Fitz is dead. He has no real family or friends or connections anymore. All he really has left to do is exact revenge on this guy who not only destroyed his life, but is also essentially trying to destroy the Six Duchies. I explained in my previous review how Regal is one of the most deeply obnoxious and evil characters I've ever read, so this was immediately a plot I could get behind. Now, as you might imagine, things don't go exactly according to plan. Fitz killing Regal actually isn't all that simple, and I knew that would be the case right away, considering this book is like 800 pages long. In fact, Fitz gets all the way to Tradeford, where Regal lives, pretty early on into the book, and this is the first cool new piece of world building Robin Hobb introduces. Buck, which is where the majority of the first two books takes place, is described as a somewhat rural, simple coastal fishing town, even though it's also the capital. Tradeford, by comparison, feels like an entirely different world. It's this wealthy, pristine, advanced, almost urban-feeling city. I didn't even really imagine places like this could exist within the Six Duchies. Instead of a traditional castle, there's more of a royal mansion surrounded by beautiful gardens, and the whole city is full of quaint shops and restaurants and well-dressed citizens. Fitz even notes that it's no wonder Regal resented being a prince in Buckkeep when this was the standard of life he was accustomed to growing up. Eventually, Fitz infiltrates the royal mansion in an attempt to kill Regal, but his plot is thwarted by Regal's skill coterie, and he is rescued at the very last moment by Verity, who through the skill helps Fitz escape and also imprints on him this command, "Come to me." If you'll recall, Verity is currently somewhere beyond the Mountain Kingdom, seeking the help of the Elderlings to come and ward off the Red Ship Raiders who are currently ravaging the entire coastline. Now that Fitz has this new command that has literally been skill implanted in his brain, like he can't disobey it even if he tries, the rest of the book becomes a different quest to go find Verity and try to bring him back, because something has clearly gone wrong with his originally intended solo mission to bring back the Elderlings. This is how the book is able to expand on this world so much when compared to the previous entries. Fitz is no longer tied to Buckkeep. He has this world-spanning mission, so he just naturally encounters more of the Six Duchies along the way. One of my favorite pieces of world building we get in this section has to do with the Wit, which is one of the magic abilities Fitz has that lets him psychically bond with animals. At this point, we know that the Wit is incredibly taboo in the Six Duchies. It's seen as degrading and disgusting, and people are ostracized for having it or using it in any way. There's really no reason for this extreme prejudice against the Wit apart from old myths and superstitions, but nonetheless, to this point, Fitz has had to really keep this aspect of himself under wraps. Burrich repeatedly tried to punish Fitz throughout his youth whenever he caught him using it, hoping to discourage it, and Regal's entire pretext for wanting Fitz dead in the first place is that Fitz is witted. Despite all of that, it's still a really interesting magic. Fitz has a beautiful bond with his wolf Night Eyes, and in this book we finally encounter some other people who are witted as well. Apparently there's a whole almost underground system of witted people who call themselves the Old Blood, and Fitz stays with them for a little while and learns a bit about the history of the wit and its subjugation within the Six Duchies. He encounters a guy who is bonded to a bear, a woman who is bonded to a hawk, and at one point Fitz is literally rescued by a ferret who warns him of danger. As with the Old Blood, there are a lot of animals in the world who exist in this big interconnected system and can all communicate with each other. I really love the wit as an idea. It's described as very naturalistic and communal. Fitz says a few times that everyone has a little bit of the wit if you can ever glean a sense of what someone is thinking or feeling without explicit communication. You're using some shade of it. I haven't gotten to her yet in this review, but while I'm on the topic, it is strongly insinuated in this book that Kettrikin possesses a strong wit sense. It's painted in a lot more loving terms than the other magic, the skill, which is always taxing and draining and dangerous and unwieldy. I'm glad the wit got this extra bit of context, and even though it wasn't a lot, it kind of opens the door for more exploration in the future books, hopefully. So along this journey, Fitz ends up joining a traveling caravan to take him beyond Blue Lake to the edge of the mountains. He meets two new characters who end up being present for the rest of the book. Starling, who is a minstrel trying to write an important song because that's how minstrels make their living, and Kettle, this old woman who is mysteriously knowledgeable about the skill and who is seeking the White Prophet in the mountains. There are a lot of interesting episodes on this journey, like Fitz getting captured and escaping Regal's guards multiple times, getting double-crossed by smugglers who agreed to illegally take him across a giant river. Too much to detail everything, but eventually Fitz arrives in the Mountain Kingdom with Starling and Kettle, and he meets up with some old friends from the previous books, Queen Kettrikin and my personal favorite, the Fool. This small group bands together, and as Regal attempts to conquer the Mountain Kingdom, they set off to the uncharted lands beyond to find Verity. So the rest of this book is essentially yet another quest. This group of Fitz, Kettrikin, the Fool, Starling, Kettle, and Night Eyes travel together, and as I keep saying, all these characters are so well fleshed out and they have such a great group dynamic that it feels so genuine and human to just witness them interact with each other on this journey. They eventually start to travel along what's called the Skill Road, which is a road that is literally somehow wrought with skill magic. And as they travel deeper into the mountains, the skill sense Fitz feels keeps increasing. The skill itself is such a fascinating magic. It's a kind of psychic network that allows users to communicate mind to mind across vast distances. They can sense one another's presence, they can share thoughts and memories and emotions, and at higher levels, it can be used to strengthen physical bodies and heal or even influence other people. But I think what makes it unique is that it's also dangerous. Users can lose themselves in it. It's addictive. It can overwhelm your mind if you're not trained enough. You can be manipulated by stronger users. Another thing I appreciated about this book with all of this in mind is how Robin Hobb deals with Molly. Throughout all of Royal Assassin, I thought Fitz and Molly had a pretty obnoxious and immature relationship, and I got annoyed having to listen to them bicker all the time. But this book kind of solves the issue perfectly. Molly thinks Fitz is dead, and the only time she appears in this book at all is through Fitz's skill visions of her. She had a baby daughter by Fitz, who she named Nettle, and she lives under the protection of Burrich off in the country somewhere. Every time Fitz has one of these visions, it's painted so tragically. Fitz can't get to her to let her know he's alive, and even if he could, she might just reject him anyway. But before any of that can even happen, the storyline ends with her actually getting together with Burrich, which, while sad, is probably what works out best for everyone, in my opinion. So back on the main plotline, we eventually learn that the old woman with them, Kettle, is actually a former skill user. Generations ago, back when Buck royalty used their own skill coteries, Kettle was a member of one and was banished for using the skill to kill her sister, who was another member of the coterie. The whole reason she tagged along on this journey in the first place has to do with this other thing I haven't really mentioned, which is that according to the prophecies of the Fool, who has some undisclosed supernatural future-seeing abilities of his own, Fitz is the catalyst, who holds an extremely pivotal role in the future course of history. Kettle needs to contribute her long-dormant skill power to help awaken the Elderlings. Finally, we are to the Elderlings, as in the realm of the Elderlings. So who are these folks? Well, it's somewhat complicated, but the long and short of it is that they are dragons. But not just giant lizard creatures, they're more like dragon sculptures that have been carved out of stone and imbued with life by skill users specifically. There's some really cool scenes in the back section of this book where Fitz wanders off and finds these abandoned cities and settlements and has visions of the past inhabitants who were magical beings that still sort of reside in the abandoned stones. And it's implied that they either were the Elderlings or at least helped to create the Elderlings. I'd wager that there's more to this than I know yet at this point in the larger series, but how it plays out in this book is they eventually, at long last, find Verity, who at first comes across as incredibly distant and weak, which is disheartening to the group, including his nephew and wife, who traveled for hundreds of miles and risked their lives to find him. But we learn that Verity is so drained because he is using the skill to literally transfer his life force into one of these stone dragon structures in order to wake it up. Kettle contributes her skill force as well, and eventually they are able to awaken the dragon by essentially sacrificing their lives to it. Fitz learns that he can also kill a bunch of Regal soldiers and use their lives to awaken yet more dragons, and the book ends with this beautiful cavalcade of colors as these magnificent dragons, who are the Elderlings, are finally able to return to the coast to rid the Six Duchies of the evil Red Ship raiders. I've heard some people take issue with the dragons in this book for being too convenient or a deus ex machina or something, but I didn't really feel that way. I thought the dragons were forecasted and foreshadowed for pretty much the whole book, the whole series really, when you consider that they are the Elderlings. And the entire last act is devoted to the process of reawakening them and what Verity needs to do in order to accomplish that. Not to mention the fact that they are on the cover of a lot of different editions of this book, including the one that I read. And even if they are a bit overpowered, that is sort of a necessity when this massive existential threat in the Red Ship Raiders is set up. Like, they're gonna need some ancient, all-powerful, supernatural beings to defeat them. Now, there's obviously an incredible amount of detail I'm leaving out, but I think the ending was handled in a very nuanced way, and ultimately, it really isn't an ending anyway. The series continues on from here, and Robin Hobb even goes so far as to explicitly state this entire process is a cycle. The Elderlings didn't just miraculously come back and defeat the evil and that's that. No, it's actually revealed that the Red Ship Raiders attacked in the first place to get revenge on the Six Duchies for the raiding and killing they did on the Out Islands generations ago. And in the future, it'll happen again. The Six Duchies and the Out Islands are in this eternal cyclical recurrence of violence and revenge, and I think as the catalyst, Fitz is going to be responsible for trying to change that. I just thought this was an overall incredibly compelling end to this trilogy. This story has always been about the characters first and foremost, and Assassin's Quest handles them all in such a perfectly complex and human way. It's not a happy ending, or even really a satisfying ending. It's complicated, it's sad and dark, not everyone gets what they want, and in fact a lot of people get what they specifically don't want, but there's also a kernel of hope in there. Even though we haven't seen it yet, the nature of the world is such that anyone can be a catalyst for change. It might not work this time, but maybe it'll work next time, or the time after that. Personally, I'm more than excited to continue this series and see what this particular cycle has in store for these characters. It might not end up being what I hope, but I bet it will feel real. I would give this book a strong 9 out of 10.